for today's budget presentation by President Muhammadu Buhari before a joint session of the National Assembly.
You're welcome to a live broadcast of the presentation of a 2021 budget by President Buhari to a joint session of the National Assembly. We will be bringing you every minute of the event as it unfolds. President Buhari has entered into the House of Reps chamber. He was accompanied by Vice President Professor Yemi Osinbajo and some ministers and members of his cabinet. This is a yearly ritual between the executive and the legislature in the National Assembly, and President Buhari will, in a matter of minutes, submit the 2021 budget to federal lawmakers in the Senate and House of Representatives. Now, before submitting the budget, he will deliver a speech where he'll give a breakdown of a 2020 budget performance and the challenges before delving into the 2021 budget proposal. Because of COVID-19, there is some social distance in the House of Rep chamber, and lawmakers and members of the executive are mandatorily wearing face masks.
Your Excellency, Mr. President, the Right Honorable Speaker, House of Representatives, Honorable Femi Bajaba-Mila, the Deputy President of the Senate, the Deputy Speaker, Principal Officers of the Senate and the House, very distinguished and honored members of the National Assembly, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Before we start this event, let me invite two of our colleagues, a senator of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and an honorable member of the House of Representatives, to lead us in Muslim and Christian prayers. First, Senator Tolu Odebi to lead us in the Christian prayer. Distinguished Senator Tolu Odebi. Switch on your mic, please. You can take the next seat if that doesn't work. Not working.
So we're waiting for the Christian and Muslim prayers to kick off.
Father, we ask for mercy and we ask for grace. We ask you, Father Almighty, to guide us in carrying out the duties of this country. Help us, O Lord, to be able to do good for the people of this country. In Jesus' name we pray.
Thank you very much. For the Muslim prayer, Honorable Maki Elema from Jigawa.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Let us recite Surah Al-Fatiha all together. May Almighty Allah accept our deeds here. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. May Allah accept our deeds.
Thank you very much. Your Excellency Muhammad Buhari, GCFR, President, Commander-in-Chief, Federal Republic of Nigeria, Your Excellency Professor Yemi Oshibajo, SAN, GCON, Vice President, Federal Republic of Nigeria, my brother, Right Honorable Speaker of the House of Representatives, Honorable Femi Bajaba-Mila, Principal Officers of the Senate and the House of Representatives, very distinguished Senators and honored members of the House of Representatives, Excellencies, Executive Governors here present, Mr. Boss Mustafa, Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Professor Ibrahim Gambari, Chief of Staff to the President, members of the Federal Executive Council present, members of the Diplomatic Corps, Engineer Ahmad Amshi, Chairman, National Assembly Service Commission, and his commissioners, Architect Ojo Amos, Clerk to the National Assembly, Clerk Senate and Clerk House of Representatives, Head of Security Agencies present, Head of Federal Agencies and Parastatals, very distinguished invited guests, gentlemen of the press, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. President, on behalf of my colleagues, very distinguished senators, and honored members of the National House of Representatives, I welcome you and your entourage to the second joint session of the 9th National Assembly for the presentation of the 2021 budget estimates. A year ago, Tuesday, 8th of October 2019 to be precise, when we presented the 2020 budget estimates to the first joint session of the 9th National Assembly, we promise you and Nigerians our readiness and determination to consider and pass the budget before the end of the year. We consider that necessary in order to reverse the irregular and unpredictable budget cycle that had impacted adversely on our economy over the years to the more desirable January-December cycle. Your Excellency, members of the National Assembly worked assiduously to process the budget estimates within the time frame we set for ourselves. I must commend the members of the National Assembly for this sense of dedication to duty and patriotism. The eventual passage of the Appropriation Bill 2020 and signing into law in record time was a clear testimony of the benefits of the legislature and the executive working together for the good of the people of this country. Mr. President, the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic disrupted our plans as it shut down economies and affected our income and expenditure projections. Its effect on the global oil market, which is central to our revenue outlay, was devastating. It necessitated a review of the entire budget, which we did with a profound sense of purpose, duty, and patriotism. In reviewing the budget, we made necessary reductions, reordered priorities, and changed sources of funds and loans given the grim realities from the pandemic. We are convinced that the steps we took went a long way in stabilizing our economy and in ensuring that funds were provided for critical programs of government. Mr. President, as we are about to begin another fiscal plan, we shall be influenced by the desire to consolidate on our gains coming from the hard lessons of the pandemic and on the urgency of sustaining our diversification programs, not only because of the unpredictable nature of oil revenue, but because of recent uncertainties arising from the coronavirus. The National Assembly is again ready to pass the 2021 budget before the end of the year, by the grace of God. This will continue to enable planning and enhance productivity and efficiency in the management and application of our resources. We can all bear witness to the salubrious effects of the early passage of the budget on our economy. Mr. President, the implementation of the 2020 budget has shown a remarkable improvement over the previous years. Certainly, the injection of funds for the various programs and projects had helped our economy. We expect that before the end of this fiscal year, the 2020 budget would have been implemented 100%. This will be a historic feat. The impact of the COVID-19 pandemic is a global affliction that every country needs to address through various measures. The National Assembly approved the Nigerian Economic Sustainability Plan, a plan of the federal government to address the economic challenges of today. All efforts should be made to implement the plan, as a number of schemes are designed to keep our micro, small, and medium enterprises afloat. Mr. President, it is our hope that the 2021 budget will be targeted at consolidation of gains made by the 2020 budget. The 2020 budget was targeted at sustaining growth and jobs. We need to not only protect jobs, but create more. The COVID-19 pandemic has revealed the ultimate vulnerability of our economy as a monolithic, oil-dependent economy. The sudden crash in the price of crude in the world market and the consequent impact on our economy should spur us into genuine search for the diversification of our economy for other revenue sources. Mr. President, as our revenues plummeted, we have resorted to borrowing to fund the development of some critical infrastructure. Our revenue generation, collection, and remittances need to be critically examined. Recent interactions between our committees on finance and national planning and economic matters with over 200 revenue-generating and collecting agencies have revealed so much inefficiencies in their systems. It was revealed that government loses so much money as a result. Similarly, there are so much leakages of monies that could have easily been available for national development. Due to inadequate revenue, government has to borrow in order to finance its projects. It is equally important, therefore, that we diversify our sources of funding of our programs and projects. We need to encourage and promote more private sector participation in developing some of our physical infrastructure. We could explore the public-private partnership, build, operate, transfer, and many other funding options. This is with a view to reducing our level of borrowing. Mr. President, let me once again assure you of the readiness of distinguished senators and honored members of the 9th National Assembly to work on the 2021 budget estimates. In the exercise of this very important constitutional function, we will be thorough in our scrutiny. On this note, it is my pleasure and privilege to invite His Excellency Mr. President, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Federation, President Muhammadu Buhari, GCFR, to present the 2021 budget estimates to the joint session of the National Assembly. Thank you all for your kind attention, Mr. President, sir.
Please sit down. Thank you very much. Your Excellency, the Vice President, President of the Senate, the Speaker, House of Representatives, members of the National Assembly, members of the Federal Executive Council, senior government officials, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. It is with pleasure that I present the 2021 Federal Budget proposal to this joint session of the National Assembly. Distinguished and honorable leaders and members of the National Assembly, at this juncture, I wish to commend your tremendous efforts in approving the revision of the 2020 medium-term expenditure framework and fiscal strategy paper and passage of the 2020 Appropriation Repeal and Amendment Act in response to the coronavirus pandemic. Today marks an important occasion in our quest to accord the federal budget process the seriousness it deserves. In line with our commitment, we have worked extra hard to ensure early submission of the 2021 to 2023 medium-term expenditure framework and fiscal strategy paper, as well as the 2021 appropriation bill. It is my sincere hope that the National Assembly will pass this bill into law early enough to enable implementation by 1st January 2021, given the collaborative manner in which the budget was prepared. In the course of this address, I will present the highlights of our budget proposals for the next fiscal year. The Honorable Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning will later provide the full details of these proposals. The 2021 budget was prepared amidst a challenging global and domestic environment due to the persistent headwinds from the coronavirus pandemic. The resulting global economic recession, low oil prices, and heightened global economic uncertainty have had important implications for our economy. The Nigerian economy is currently facing serious challenges, with the macroeconomic environment being significantly disrupted by the coronavirus pandemic. Real gross domestic product growth declined by 6.1% in the second quarter of 2020. This ended the three-year trend of positive but modest real GDP growth recorded since the second quarter of 2017. I'm glad to note that through our collective efforts, our economy performed relatively better than that of many other developed and emerging economies. GDP growth is projected to be negative in the third quarter of this year. As such, our economy may lapse
into the second recession in 4 years, with significant adverse consequences. However, we are working assiduously to ensure a rapid recovery in 2021. We remain committed to implementing programs to lift 100 million Nigerians out of poverty in the next 10 years. As skills deficits limit employment opportunities in the formal economy, various skills development programs are being implemented simultaneously to address this problem frontally. For instance, the government is implementing the Special Public Works Program to provide employment opportunities to 774,000 youth across the 774 local government areas of Nigeria. We have also recently introduced the 75 billion naira Youth Investment Fund, of which 25 billion naira have been provided in 2021 budget. We thank all Nigerians for your perseverance and continued support during these difficult times. We remain unwavering in our commitment to actualize our vision of a bright future for everyone. Distinguished and honorable members of the National Assembly, you will recall that the 2020 budget of sustaining growth and job creation was amended in response to recent fiscal pressures. I am glad to report that these efforts enabled us to effectively respond to the public health challenges of coronavirus outbreak and moderate the economic impact. Pursuant to our revised assumptions, the amended 2020 budget was based on a benchmark oil price of $28 per barrel, oil production of 1.8 million barrels per day, and exchange rate of 360 naira to $1 dollar. Based on these budget parameters, aggregate revenue of 5.84 trillion naira was projected to fund 10.81 trillion naira in expenditure. The projected deficit of 4.98 trillion naira, or 3.57% of GDP, is expected to be financed mainly by borrowing. In 2020, average daily oil production was 1.88 million barrels per day up to June, as against the revised estimate of 1.8 million barrels per day for the entire year. However, the market price of Bonny Light crude averaged 4.79. I read that again. However, the market price of Bonny Light crude averaged $40.79 US per barrel, significantly higher than the revised benchmark price of $28 US per barrel. As at July 2020, the federal government's actual revenue available for the budget was 2.1 trillion naira. This revenue performance was only 68% of our prorated target in the revised 2020 budget. At 992.45 billion naira, oil revenue performed well above our budget target by 168%. Non-oil tax revenues totaled 622.8 trillion. I read that again. Non-oil tax revenues totaled 622.8 billion naira, which was 73% of the revised budget, 73% only of the revised budget. To improve independent revenue performance, I have directed that the cost profiles of government-owned enterprises should be scrutinized and limits imposed on their cost-to-revenue ratios. Supervising ministers have also been directed to ensure closer monitoring of the revenue-generating activities and expenditures of the government-owned enterprises. On the expenditure side, as at the end of July 2020, a total of 5.37 trillion naira had been spent as against the prorated expenditure of 5.82 trillion naira. Accordingly, deficit was 3.27 trillion naira. This represents 66% of the revised budgeted deficit for the full year. Despite these challenges, we met our debt service obligations. We are also up to date on the payment of statutory transfers and staff salaries, while overhead costs have been significantly covered. For the first time in recent years, we commenced the implementation of this year's capital budget in the first quarter. As at 15 September 2020, a total of about 1.2 trillion naira had been released for capital projects. Every federal MDA, that's ministries, departments, and agencies, has received at least 50% of its 2020 capital expenditure budget, in line with my earlier directives. Let me emphasize that revenue generation remains our major challenge. Nevertheless, government is determined to tackle the persistent problems with domestic resource mobilization, as there is a limit to deficit financing through borrowing. The time has come for us to maintain a healthy balance between meeting our growing expenditure commitments and our long-term public financial health. Over the last year, this administration has implemented several priority projects. I am happy to report that much progress has been made on several fronts, and our government has delivered on key policies, programs, and projects in these priority areas. In agriculture, we have recorded appreciable success in rice and other crops, mainly through the Anchor Borrowers Program and the Presidential Fertilizer Initiative, anchored by the Central Bank of Nigeria and the Nigerian Sovereign Investment Authority, respectively. We are also accelerating the construction of 337 rural roads around key agricultural corridors to enhance access to market and reduce post-harvest losses. These efforts have reduced the adverse impact of coronavirus on our food availability, prices, and security. We have made progress on the railway projects connecting different parts of the country. The Lagos-Ibadan line will soon be operational. The Abuja-Kaduna line is running efficiently. The Itape-Ajakuta line was finally completed after over 30 years since it was initiated and commissioned, now in September 2020. Arrangements are underway to complete the Ibadan-Kano line. Also, work will soon commence on the Port Harcourt to Maiduguri line and Calabar-Lagos coastal line, which will connect the southern and southeastern states to the north and the south-south, as well as southeast to the north and southwest, respectively. The second Niger Bridge is at about 46% completion. We hope to commission the project before the end of our tenure in 2023. We have awarded several contracts to rehabilitate, reconstruct, and construct major arterial roads in order to reduce the hardship to commuters and increase economic activity. To bridge the infrastructure deficit, we are also implementing innovative financing strategies to pull in private sector investment. The infrastructure company, which I recently approved, will become a world-class infrastructure development vehicle, wholly fully focused on making critical infrastructural investments in Nigeria. This infrastructure company will raise funding from the Central Bank of Nigeria, the Nigeria Sovereign Investment Authority, the Africa Finance Corporation pension funds, as well as local and foreign private sector development financiers. Under the Road Infrastructure Tax Credit Scheme, we are undertaking the construction and rehabilitation of over 780 kilometers of roads and bridges nationwide to be financed by the grant of tax credits to investing businesses. Ongoing projects under this scheme include A, construction and rehabilitation of Lokoja, Obajana, Kabba, Ilorin Road, Section 2, Obajana, Kabba in Kogi and Kwara states. B, construction of Apapa to Owo Shoki Ojota Expressway in Lagos State, and C, construction of Bodo Boni Road with a bridge across the Opobo Channel in Rivers State. To enhance good governance, we strengthened our anti-corruption agencies to ensure they work independently and jointly while respecting the rule of law. We have also worked to address emerging cases of insecurity and insurgency nationwide with innovative approaches. Our security operatives in the Niger Delta, North Central, and Northwest are yielding desired results. We are determined to get rid of bandits, kidnappers, and criminal behavior from our midst. Distinguished senators, honorable members, let me now turn to the 2021 appropriation bill, which is designed to further deliver on the goals of our economic sustainability plan. This plan provides a clear roadmap for our post-coronavirus economic recovery as a transitional plan to take us from the economic recovery and growth plan 2017 to 2020 to the successor medium-term national development plan 21 to 25. In view of many challenges confronting us, we must accelerate our economic recovery process, promote social inclusion, and strengthen the resilience of the economy. The 2021 appropriation has, therefore, been themed the budget of economic recovery and resilience. It is expected to accelerate the pace of our economic recovery, promote economic diversification, enhance competitiveness, and ensure social inclusion. Distinguished members of the National Assembly, the 2021-2023 medium-term expenditure framework and fiscal strategy paper set out the parameters for the 2021 budget, which include A, benchmark oil price of 40 United States dollars per barrel, B, daily oil production estimate of 1.86 million barrels per day, inclusive of condensates of 300,000 to 400,000 barrels per day. C, exchange rate of 379 naira per United States dollar. And D, gross domestic product growth projected at 3% and inflation closing at 11.95%. Distinguished and honorable members, I have directed the Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planner to finalize the Finance Bill 2020, which will be forwarded for your kind consideration and passage into law shortly after today's 2021 budget presentation. The Finance Bill is to support the realization of our 2021 revenue projections, adopt appropriate counter-cyclical fiscal policies, and enhance the efficiency of fiscal incentives. In accordance with the Fiscal Responsibility Act 2007, we will prepare and publish a tax expenditure statement for 2019. The 2019 statement will be the first of these annual statements, setting out the estimated cost of tax exemptions, incentives, and rebates provided under Nigeria's revenue and other laws. The 2019 statement is expected to contribute to public discussion on the use of our tax policies and systems to achieve socio-economic development. Based on the foregoing fiscal assumptions and parameters, total federally distributable revenue is estimated at 8.433 trillion naira in 2021. Today, total revenue available to fund the 2021 federal budget is estimated at 7.86 trillion naira. This includes grants and aid of 354.85 billion naira, as well as the revenues of 60 government-owned enterprises. Oil revenue is projected at 2.01 trillion naira. Non-oil revenue is estimated at 1.49 trillion naira. As you will observe, the format of the 2021 appropriation bill has been modified to include budgeted revenues, no matter how small, for each MDA, that's ministry, departments, and agencies, to focus on internal revenue generation. Accordingly, I implore you to pay as much attention to the revenue side as you do to the expenditure side. In aggregate expenditure of 13.08 trillion naira is proposed for the federal government in 2021. This includes 1.35 trillion naira spending by government-owned enterprises and grants and aid-funded expenditures of 354.85 billion naira. For 2021, the proposed 13.08 trillion naira expenditure comprises A, non-debt recurrent costs of 5.65 trillion naira, B, personnel costs of 3.76 trillion naira, C, pensions, gratuities, and retirees benefits of 500.19 billion naira. D. Overheads of 625.5 billion naira. E. Debt service of 3.124 trillion naira. Debt service, I will repeat again, debt service of 3.124 trillion naira. F. Statutory transfers of 484.49 billion naira. G. Sinking fund of 220 billion naira to retire certain maturing bonds. The 2021 budget deficit, inclusive of government-owned enterprises and projected loans, is projected at 5.2 trillion naira. 5.2 trillion naira. This represents 3.64% of estimated GDP, slightly above the 3% threshold set by the Fiscal Responsibility Act 2007. It is, however, to be noted that we still face the existential challenge of coronavirus pandemic and its aftermath. I believe that this provides a justification to exceed the threshold as provided for by this law. The deficit will be financed mainly by new borrowings, totally 4.28 trillion naira, 205.15 billion naira from privatization proceeds, and 709.69 billion naira in drawdowns on multilateral and bilateral loans secured for specific projects and programs. The sum of 484.49 billion naira provided for statutory transfers in the 2021 budget represents an increase of 56.46 billion naira, or 13% over the revised 2020 provision. The statutory transfer provisions are: A. Niger Delta Development Commission, 63.51 billion naira. B. Northeast Development Commission, 29.7 billion naira. C. National Judicial Council, 110 billion naira. D. Universal Basic Education Commission, 70.05 billion naira. E. Independent National Electoral Commission, 40 billion naira. F. National Assembly. F. National Assembly. Yeah. Well, I will read that again. F. National Assembly, 128 billion naira. G. Public Complaints Commission, 5.2 billion naira. H. Human Rights Commission, 3 billion naira. And I. Basic Health Care Provision Fund, 35.03 billion naira. In compliance with the Fiscal Responsibility Act 2007, all beneficiaries of statutory transfers will be required to provide the Budget Office of the Federation with periodic reports on the allocation and expenditure of funds for inclusion in the quarterly budget implementation report. In our efforts to enhance national security and Human Capital Development. A major part of the 2021 recurrent cost estimate is allocated to paying salaries and overheads in MDAs, providing these critical public services. These include A, 227.02 billion naira for the Ministry of Interior, B, 441.39 billion naira for the Ministry of Police Affairs, C, 545.1 billion naira for the Ministry of Education, D, 840.5 billion and 45 billion naira for Ministry of Defense, E, 380.21 billion naira for Ministry of Health. Personnel costs is still our largest single item of expenditure. In 7 months to 31st July 2020, it accounted for 34% of total federal government spending and is projected at 33% of 2021 expenditure. To check the incidence of payments to non-existent personnel and unauthorized allowances, only federal staff that have been captured on the Integrated Personnel Payroll Information System platform will receive salaries. All agencies have been directed to ensure that they obtain all necessary approvals before embarking on any fresh recruitment. Any breach of these directives will be severely sanctioned. We remain committed to meeting our debt service obligations. Hence, we have provided 3.12 trillion naira for this in 2021, representing an increase of 445.57 billion naira from 2.68 trillion naira in 2020. A total of 2.183 trillion naira has been set aside to service domestic debts, while 940.89 billion naira has been provided for foreign debt service. 220 billion naira is provided for transfers to the sinking fund to pay off maturing bonds issued to local contractors and creditors. Total overhead costs of MDAs and government-owned enterprises are projected to rise to 625.5 billion naira in 2021, mainly due to the inclusion of the overheads of an additional 50 government-owned enterprises. Overhead provisions have also been made for newly created agencies. To keep to a tab on running costs, MDAs must adhere to expenditure controls. An aggregate sum of 3.85 trillion naira is expected to be available for capital projects in 2021 as summarized below. A, 1.8 trillion naira for MDA's capital expenditure. B, 745 billion naira for capital supplementation. C, 355 billion naira for grants and aid-funded projects. D, 20 billion naira for the Family Homes Fund. E, 25 billion naira for the Nigeria Youth Investment Fund. F, 350 236 billion naira for 60 government-owned enterprises. G. 247 billion naira for capital component of statutory transfers. H. 710 billion naira for projects funded by multilateral and bilateral loans. The 2021 capital budget is 1.15 trillion naira, higher than the 2020 provision of 2.69 trillion naira. At 29% of aggregate expenditure, the provision moves closer to this administration's policy target of 30%. Capital expenditure in 2021 remains focused on the completion of as many ongoing projects as possible, rather than the commencement of new ones. We have also made efforts to ensure equity in the distribution of projects and programs in the proposed budget. I will be providing the National Assembly a list of some of the most critical projects which we must work collectively to ensure they receive adequate funding. Until projects reach completion, they do not deliver the dividends of democracy that Nigerians rightly deserve. Key capital spending allocation in 2021 budget include A. Power, 198 billion naira, inclusive 150 billion naira for the power sector recovery plan. B. Works and housing, 440 billion naira. C. Transportation, 256 billion naira. D. Defense, 121 billion naira. E. Agriculture and rural development, 110 billion naira. F. Water resources, 153 billion naira. G. Industry, trade and investment, 51 billion naira. H. Education, 127 billion naira. I. Universal Basic Education Commission, 70 billion naira. J. Health, 132 billion naira. K. Zonal Intervention Project, 100 billion naira. And L. Niger Delta Development Commission, 64 billion naira. The Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development will facilitate the integrated development of its sector by promoting crops value chains, as well as providing rural roads, water and sanitation, veterinary and pest control, grazing, food strategic reserves, and access to inputs and extension services. The 157% increase in capital allocation to the health sector is to enhance the capacity to deliver healthcare services through the procurement of equipment, vaccines, and other facilities. 2 centers of excellence, as well as 1 accident and emergency center, will be equipped in federal teaching hospitals in each geopolitical zone. In addition, numerous primary health care centers will be equipped and upgraded across the 6 geopolitical zones. Furthermore, funds have been allocated for the expansion of midwives service scheme in the 6 geopolitical zones. To enhance occupational safety, funds have been provided for the provision of personal protective equipment for health workers. The Ministry of Education's capital allocation has been increased by 65% to improve the education of our children. Funds have been provided for the provision of scholarship awards to Nigerian students at home and abroad. We have provided funds for the upgrade of security and other infrastructural facilities in our university colleges nationwide. To improve access to education, we have made provision for the establishment of 5 new federal science and technology and technical colleges. We have also provided for the payment of allowances to 5,000 teachers under the Federal Teachers Scheme. In line with our commitment to invest in transportation infrastructure, capital allocation to the works and housing sector is to facilitate the completion of several critical projects in 2021. I have directed the Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning to provide a detailed breakdown of key infrastructural projects in her subsequent press briefing. Key projects for the implementation in the power sector include several rural electrification projects, the 36 states and Abuja, rural electrification access program in federal universities, the Kaduna LPFO gas-fired power plant, the Mambila hydro power project, and the Zingeru hydropower project. Provision had been made for legacy debts owed to local contractors, compensation and resettlement of project-affected communities. The renewable energy, micro-utility solar project, and the construction of transmission lines and substations nationwide. These projects' implementation is expected to have positive impact on electricity supply nationwide, as well as boost productivity and employment. Projects to be implemented by the Ministry of Water Resources in 2021 include provision of potable water in the Northeast, construction of irrigation and dams across the country, and the provision of water, sanitation, and hygiene facilities. The Ministry of Transportation has earmarked funds for projects such as the Lagos-Ibadan-Kano line, Abuja-Kaduna line, Port Harcourt-Maiduguri line, and the Itape-Ajakuta-Wari line. These projects, when completed, will minimize the cost of transporting people and goods around the country. To maintain the peace in the Niger Delta region, for economic and social activities to thrive, the provision of 65 billion naira for the Presidential Amnesty Program has been retained in the 2021 budget. In addition, the sum of 63.5 billion naira has been appropriated for the Niger Delta Development Commission, and 24.47 billion naira has been provided for the capital project of the Ministry of Niger Delta Affairs. These allocations should further support the development of the region by facilitating the completion of important ongoing projects such as the East-West Road. The government is already implementing several measures to overcome our fiscal constraints. In addition to the strategic revenue growth initiatives, we are leveraging technology and automation, as well as more effective monitoring of independently generated revenues. Our efforts are aimed at addressing revenue leakages and redirecting scarce resources to the poor and vulnerable. These efforts include A. Deregulation of the price of petroleum products. B. Ongoing verification exercise with IPPIS. And C. Implementation of service-based electricity tariffs. The new petrol pricing regime has freed up resources that was allocated to subsidize petroleum products. Similarly, the ongoing IPPIS verification exercise has closed gaps that encourage ghost workers or pensioners. The service-reflective electricity tariffs will help resolve the liquidity crisis in the power sector and make the sector attractive to foreign investment. These reforms have released trillions of naira for allocation to other priority areas. Distinguished senators, honorable members, permit me to reiterate that the main thrust of our capital spending program in 2021 is the completion of as many ongoing projects as possible across the country. Accordingly, we have prioritized projects that can be rapidly completed to benefit our people. Distinguished senators and honorable members, I note with satisfaction your determination to promptly consider and pass the Petroleum Industry Bill into law. The enactment of this bill will boost confidence and attract further investment into our oil and gas sector, as well as increase revenues. I fully understand the difficulties many of our people are going through with the implementation of our reform agenda. However, the measures we are implementing are necessary for sustainable public finance, better allocation of our scarce resources, and improved public service delivery. As we implement these reforms, social safety nets will be implemented to cushion the effect of the most vulnerable of our citizens, as well as business owners. In furtherance of our inclusiveness agenda, the sum of 420 billion naira has been provided to sustain the social investment program. 20 billion naira has also been set aside for the Family Homes Fund, our social housing program. We have expanded our national social register to include an additional 1 million Nigerians following the onset of coronavirus. We recently introduced the 75 billion naira survival fund program to support and protect businesses from potential vulnerabilities. Furthermore, the Central Bank of Nigeria is reducing the interest rate on its intervention facilities from 9% to 5% with 1 year moratorium to 31st March 2021 to provide concessional lending of A, 100 billion naira to households and small businesses, B, 100 billion naira to the healthcare and pharmaceutical industry, and C, 1 trillion naira to large agricultural and manufacturing businesses. We urge Nigerian businesses and individuals to make the most of these concessional credit facilities and other such opportunities. Mr. Senate President, Mr. Speaker, distinguished honorable members of the 9th National Assembly, let me use this opportunity to again commend your firm commitment towards ensuring a very harmonious and productive relationship with the executive. it is important to further deepen this relationship in the interest of our people. As you review the 2021 budget estimates, we believe the legislative process will be expedited to ensure its prompt passage to sustain the restoration of a predictable January-December fiscal year. In this regard, I have directed all ministers and heads of agencies to be personally available for budget defense. Let me re-emphasize that Nigerians expect that the 2021 budget will contain only implementable and critical projects, which, when completed, will significantly address current structural challenges of the economy, improve the business environment, and accelerate economic recovery. May I conclude my remarks by commending the National Assembly for its support in steering our economy during these very challenging times. We remain committed to sustaining this partnership. We believe that as we work together, we will jointly deliver on our joint mandate to our people. It is with great pleasure, therefore, that I lay before this distinguished joint session of the National Assembly the 2021 budget proposal of the Federal Government of Nigeria for your consideration. I thank you for your attention. May God continue to bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Amen. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
President Buhari is right about now presenting the 2021 budget before a joint session of the National Assembly. Before laying the budget before a joint session, he has given the fiscal assumptions in the 2021 budget, including the exchange rate, inflation rate, as well as the capital and personnel allocation in the budget. Some of the key assumptions in the 2021 budget is 3.7 trillion naira for personnel costs, 3.124 trillion naira debt service. And debt service is to be financed from new borrowing of 4.28 trillion naira. The president also gave the key capital allocations to some of the critical government agencies. The Speaker of the House of Representatives is about to give a closing remark at this event.
Of the National Assembly, let me invite the Right Honorable Speaker, Honorable Femi Bajaba-Mila, for the vote of thanks. Honorable Speaker. You might want to move a little because I'm taking off my mask. His Excellency Muhammadu Buhari, GCFR, President and Commander-in-Chief of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, His Excellency Professor Yemi Oshibajo, Senior Advocate, GCON, Vice President, Federal Republic of Nigeria, Distinguished Senator Ahmed Lawan, the President of the Senate, Chairman of the National Assembly, Principal Officers of the Senate and House of Representatives, distinguished Senators and Honorable Members of the House of Representatives, Excellencies, Executive Governors here present, Mr. Boss Mustafa, the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Professor Ibrahim Gambari, Chief of Staff to the President, members of the Federal Executive Council, members of the Diplomatic Corps, Engineer Ahmed Amishi, Chairman, National Assembly Service Commission and his commissioners, Architect Ojo Amos, Clerk to the National Assembly, the Clerk Senate and Clerk House of Representatives, heads of security agencies, heads of federal agencies and parastatals, invited guests, gentlemen of the press, ladies and gentlemen. We have once again just witnessed and experienced the beauty and majesty of our democracy. The laying of the budget proposal by Mr. President before the legislature for consideration and approval. On behalf of the Senate and House of Representatives of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, I extend sincere appreciation to His Excellency President Muhammadu Buhari, GCFR, for coming to the House today for this purpose in fulfillment of the obligations of his office. When just over a year ago we gathered in this chamber to receive the budget proposal and begin the appropriation process, we made specific commitments to the Nigerian people. We promised that we would pass the budget promptly, free of the rancor that had bedeviled the process in times past, and we delivered on that promise. I thank my colleagues in the National Assembly for the dedication and commitment they showed last year during the appropriation process. Senators and members of the House of Representatives toiled night and day, sometimes through the night and into the wee hours of the morning, to ensure that we achieved our commitment to return to the January to December budget cycle as envisaged by the Constitution. I do not doubt that we will exhibit the same commitment to nation building and deliver a good budget on time. We cannot afford a return to the old practices, and we must do everything in our power to avoid such an outcome. We also promised to pass a budget that reflected our priorities: healthcare, education, public infrastructure, and the development of an economy that is less dependent on fossil fuels and gives to all Nigerians the ability to achieve their dreams equal to their effort and commitment. We kept that promise too. We recognize that more needs to be done, and I assure all the Nigerian people that we will continue in this regard. Let me also use this opportunity to announce a new protocol in the House. Henceforth, all ministries, departments, and agencies who come to defend their budget or their budget proposals will do so without their security details present. We must take this course of action to prevent the unacceptable proliferation of sidearms in the hearing rooms during such engagements. Additionally, the House intends to adhere to the COVID-19 social distancing protocols, and we need to be able to limit the numbers of people in these hearing rooms at any point in time. The world changes quickly, often without notice, and always with consequences. We have learned this lesson at a high cost in the past few months, and we must ensure that the lessons learned are reflected in the budget that emerges from the appropriations process. We must make sure that we are better prepared for next time, because there will be the next time. The reality of globalization and the connected interdependence of nations means that there will always be something on the horizon that threatens to destabilize our world. Let us move forward in this certainty and make sure that we are prepared for the future, whatever it may bring. I thank His Excellency President Muhammadu Buhari, GCFR, the Vice President, Professor Yemi Oshibajo, the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Mr. Boss Mustafa, the Budget Office, honorable ministers, and all those who have labored to develop the proposal that Mr. President has laid before Parliament. I believe I speak on behalf of the entire National Assembly in assuring you that the proposal will receive thorough and speedy consideration. We will collaborate with the ministries, departments, and agencies of the executive to deliver a budget that meets the needs and matches the ambitions of the Nigerian people. And we will hold ourselves in the legislature to the highest standard of integrity so that our deliberations and contributions to this process are motivated only by considerations of the best interests of the Nigerian people. I thank you all for joining us here today. God bless you, and God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
The end of the presentation of the 2021 budget by President Buhari to a joint session of the National Assembly. He presented a 13.08 trillion naira budget before lawmakers in both chambers and has asked the National Assembly to pass the budget before January 1st, 2021 to ensure that Nigeria continues with the one-year budget cycle. President Buhari is making his way out of the House of Reps chamber and is going back to the presidential villa for the rest of his activities for the day. So thank you for staying with us during this event. I am Linda Akibe, and I'll now hand you over to Lagos for the rest of our programs.
You've been watching a live Channels television event.